Have big plans for the summer? We hope you're not spending lots of time on your lawn. Coming up on this edition of Volusia Magazine, we'll talk about the summertime rules for fertilizing and tell you how to have a great looking yard the more Floridian way. That's coming up next on Volusia Magazine. Well, it's summertime here in Volusia County, and that means it's a different set of rules when it comes to fertilizing. So joining us today in the studio is Megan Martin, and she is with the county's Environmental Management Division. Hi, Megan. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Joanne. Thank you for having me.
So give us a little bit of background on the fertilizer ordinance, which was adopted in 2014. How did it even come about?
Absolutely. So it all started with the state of Florida's model ordinance that then the Environmental Management Division staff recognized a need for a more stringent ordinance, and they worked to pass that ordinance that we have today in 2014.
And so what is the time frame? I said in the summer, but basically it's June 1st, and it goes through how long?
June 1st through September 30th, anything containing nitrogen or phosphorus is banned.
So that means during the summer, during that time frame, people have to change the way that they might have been used to fertilizing their lawn. So kind of go into a little more detail on what that ban means.
Sure, absolutely. So nitrogen and phosphorus are the first two numbers on the fertilizer label. Both of those nutrients promote growth. So any nutrients that end up in our waterways during that rainy season would also promote growth. This can lead to algae blooms and fish kills and low oxygen environments in our waterways. So because of that, we have the ban during the summertime, and outside of that ban, we also have some stipulations. Any nitrogen outside of that ban that's applied has to be 50% or more slow release, and we actually have a year-round ban on phosphorus unless there's a soil deficiency.
And so this ban during the summer, this applies to all homes and businesses except those in Deltona and DeBerry because they have their own fertilizer ordinances. So how does your team work to educate people throughout the county that there is this change during the summer when it comes to fertilizing?
Absolutely. So we have had a presence engaging with the community at festivals. We have done multiple presentations throughout the county. We have been at planting and gardening seminars, and as of last month, we actually have almost every vendor of fertilizer in Volusia County has our educational materials near their fertilizer section. And the best part is that we're continuing to develop these partnerships as time goes on.
Yeah, I don't know if people really understand the effects of the fertilizer when it gets into the waterways, and again, that's why you said during the summer when it's really rainy, that fertilizer is not having an effect on what you want it to do for the lawns. It's really just getting washed away, and so if it's getting washed away, there's only so many places it can go.
Absolutely. Nitrogen is the first number on the bag, is actually very highly mobile in the soils. So it can move freely through soil particles from the surface down into our groundwater, and it can also run off on the surface into surface water bodies, especially when it rains.
And give us some examples. I know in the past people have seen things on the news when there's talk about algae blooms or other things. Those are some of the results of fertilizers and such getting into the waterways.
Absolutely. When algae blooms, it actually creates a low oxygen environment at night during the height of the bloom, and then the algae, as it decomposes, additionally requires oxygen. And there's actually multiple things going on to create that low oxygen environment that the fish and other life just cannot live in.
And what other ways have you seen that it affects, besides what we can see visibly with the blooms? What else do you know about how it negatively affects the waterways and such?
Absolutely. Well, nutrients in our waterways are never anything that we're going to want to see. We're going to want to prevent that. And primarily they are going to promote growth of algae and other aquatic plants as well. So they're just something that we want to generally keep on our landscapes as opposed to letting them into our water bodies.
And so you have an educational campaign, and part of that campaign is to promote the character called Felix the Flamingo. He helps to spread the message about be Floridian. So explain a little bit about what it means to be Floridian.
Absolutely. So to be Floridian now means to protect our fun and protect everything we know and love about Florida. We can do this by doing the responsible thing this summer and going to the beach or going fishing instead of doing yard work. So Felix the Flamingo is there on social media and elsewhere to remind us that we should really be doing the responsible thing, which is going to the beach.
Basically, it's saying don't spend all your time doing these things to make your yard look green, or to do these things with extra fertilizer or extra water, because one, it's not really needed, and we're going to go into that in a little bit. It's not necessarily needed, and this effort is kind of being wasted because during the rainy months it's just not effective.
That's absolutely right, yes. And during the summer rains, they don't water the fertilizer in. They wash it off our lawns and into our ditches and streets and water bodies. Essentially everything that's on the ground, if it's not absorbed by a plant, it will be in our water.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some tips to make your lawn green and be more Florida friendly with our landscaping. So we'll be back in just a minute.
The Atlantic hurricane season begins June 1st and continues through November 30th. Be prepared and take time to develop your emergency plans. Stock a 14-day supply of non-perishable food, water, and medical items for your family. Identify special needs for you and your loved ones. Discuss and create an evacuation plan. Remember, shelter should only be used as a last resort. For more information, visit volusia.org/emergency.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
After recent heavy rains, mosquitoes are on the move. Did you know that if a container can retain water, a mosquito can lay eggs in it? A small amount of water can lead to big problems. Take a walk around your property and tip and toss any standing water. Be a buzzkill. Put a stop to mosquitoes.
Hi, I'm Josh Wagner.
And I'm Billy Wheeler. During the planning stages of the Tomstead Veteran Memorial Bridge, people voiced their desire to have a Veterans Memorial Plaza on the northwest side of the bridge.
The Veterans Memorial Plaza will create a special place in our community for people to reflect and connect with our fallen heroes.
The proposed concept for the new Veterans Memorial Plaza is estimated to be a $1.2 million endeavor.
Your donation will help us create a special place in our community in which we can honor Volusia County veterans from all military branches and military conflicts. To help fund our Veterans Memorial Plaza, visit veteransmemorialbridge.com or call Volusia County Accounting at 386-736-5933.
We appreciate your support to create this lasting memorial for those who have served and continue to serve our country.
Mosquitoes will bite day and night, so protect yourself with these tips. Keep mosquitoes outside by shutting doors and covering windows with screens. Use EPA-approved insect repellents anytime you're outdoors. Cover your skin with long sleeves and pants. Mosquitoes lay their eggs in water. Just a bottle cap of water is all they need. So drain, refresh, or cover anything around buildings that can hold water at least weekly, and put away outside items that aren't being used. A message from the Florida Department of Health.
Stay connected with the latest Volusia County news, events, and updates on our social media channels. Like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Catch up with previous stories on YouTube, or just head over to our website, volusia.org.
We're back. I'm Joanne Magley, the Community Information Director for Volusia County Government, and I'm joined today with my guest, Megan Martin. She is with the county's Environmental Management Division. And we're talking about ways to be more Floridian, to not use fertilizer during the summer because it's actually not allowed for our rules in the summer. And before the break, we talked about reasons why that isn't really a good thing. But now we're going to talk about ways to be more Florida friendly as far as landscaping is concerned, because some people might say, oh, but I really want to keep my lawn green. And even outside the ban of the summer, there's not a need for a whole lot of fertilizing anyway. You have recommendations. Why don't you talk about those recommendations for after the summer months happen?
Absolutely. So, during the summer months, as we mentioned, that rain will wash those nutrients away. It's also worth noting that during the winter months, when plants are dormant, they can't absorb very many nutrients either. So what we recommend, we say twice as nice, and we recommend if you must fertilize, do so once in the spring and once in the fall with 50% or more slow-release fertilizer, and that'll carry you through those summer months without posing that extra risk to our water bodies.
And so before we go into the Florida-friendly landscaping plants, talk about some of maybe the biggest culprits as far as using up too much resources, such as needing excess water or needing excess care. And I'm sure certain type of lawns probably fall into that category automatically.
Right, absolutely. Well, off the bat, most turf in general isn't necessarily native. So we have a lot of turf grasses do require supplemental irrigation or supplemental fertilization in order to maintain that green color and to maintain their health. Even still, there are some things that you can do with turf to kind of ease them off of those requirements that they're used to. If you slowly resist the urge to water, for example, until you see the leaves of your grass starting to curl, or you see footprints in your lawn, and then go ahead and do that irrigation and then wait again until you see those signs of stress, you will actually be training over time, training the turf to be able to fend for itself a little bit better. And you might be surprised that over time it might not quite need you as much as you think it does.
And what about some other ways to provide micronutrients to keep lawns green, other than the fertilizer products that you already mentioned?
Absolutely. So there are actually quite a few summer-safe products that do not contain nitrogen or phosphorus. Those products are going to have the first two numbers on the label are going to both be 0. Those are going to provide micronutrients. For example, iron. If you have an iron deficiency, iron can actually really green up your lawn if you apply iron. Additionally, when you mow your lawn, those grass clippings are full of nitrogen. So if we were to make sure that those grass clippings end up back on their landscape where they belong and sweep them off of any roads, make sure they can't go into any storm drains, those grass clippings will actually apply quite a bit of nitrogen and nutrients to the grass.
And I imagine that's because they already have it on them from being fertilized.
Yes, that's part of it. Actually, grass clippings in general without fertilization are pretty high in nitrogen.
All right. So now let's move to some of the plants or ground coverings that really make a landscape look nice and are considered Florida friendly. So you have a few here that we will go through. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, let's go ahead and start with the sunshine mimosa. That's the one that is closest to you here. Sunshine mimosa is a native plant, and it's actually a pollinator plant. It is a larval host plant to the little sulfur butterfly. So they have these really beautiful pink puffball looking flowers that they produce. The leaves themselves are actually sensitive to touch. They'll close when they are touched. So they are a sprawling species. They're an excellent sustainable turf replacement because once they're established, they have a deep taproot, which actually makes them really great for erosion control as well. And they will not require fertilization, irrigation, or overall maintenance once they're established. In the process of establishing them, they will need to be regularly watered until they're established. They will spread, they like to spread, but they're easily controlled, and they can handle light traffic as well.
That's interesting. All right, and this one here doesn't have the bloom, but again, it also has a nice bloom, which adds to your color in your yard. Let's go to the next one that has the little yellow flower.
Right, so that one in the front there is called perennial peanut. That one is actually not a native plant. This is what we would refer to as a Florida-friendly plant. It is actually native to Brazil. However, it has been able to provide many benefits here in Florida without becoming invasive or problematic in any way like that. And the perennial peanut, it will also spread. It's a low-lying ground cover. It's another sustainable turf alternative. It is worth mentioning that both of these plants, the sunshine mimosa and the perennial peanut, will die back or lose some of their vegetation in the winter for a few months, but they will come back very full in the spring. So,
are there any specific areas that it's recommended to plant these?
The perennial peanut is also good for erosion control. It has a mat of tubers. That's how it spreads. So it can be put, it's not as traffic tolerant, but it can be put anywhere in medians or off to the side in a bed, and it can do really well there and really fill that out.
So really take up some areas that would have normally been taken up with grass.
Absolutely.
Fill in that
Those
gap.
areas of grass where you don't actually need it to be grass are where these types of plants are ideal because grass does serve a function, and if you have a family or if you play certain games that require turf, you might want to have a little area of your yard that is manicured with turf in that way. However, in the corners of your yard or just these small little pockets that might not necessarily be used for the turf, the uses the turf provides, these types of plants can do really well. All of these plants on the table are well suited for full sun environments to part sun environments. So they can definitely tolerate the heat in Florida. They are also pest and disease resistant.
Now, what about this last one that you have here for us? What is this one called?
Yeah, so this one is a muley grass. Muley grass is especially great for borders. When you're landscaping borders, people like to use this to, between 24 to 36 inches apart, plant clumps of these muley grass. It is clumping. It will get to be about 2 to 3 feet tall. And in the fall, it has these phenomenal pink feathery flowers. They're technically flowers, but they kind of look just like grass tufts. But they're really, really stately when they're blooming in the fall.
And and these are all readily available at local nurseries or hardware stores and such that have plant sections?
Well, actually, these are a little harder to come by in your typical hardware store. These are going to be more likely to be found in nurseries that specialize in native plants.
Okay. So we talked about native plants. We talked about Florida-friendly plants. You gave us a little bit of information on alternatives for fertilizing. You also have information that you can provide regarding composting, because that is another way that you can add nutrients. So give us some basics about composting, because some people might be a little intimidated when they think of what it takes to compost.
Oh, sure. Well, there's a lot to it, and at the same time, it's very simple. Composting is what happens naturally. Every time a plant loses a leaf and it falls to the ground, it's depositing nutrients into the soil. And those nutrients in the soil will break down, rather the material will break down, and those nutrients will become available over time to those plants to take back up. So nature is all the time already doing composting. It's already slow release fertilizer. Compost is essentially the original slow release fertilizer. So when we start to delve into composting, we have to start thinking about nutrients in general and nutrient behavior. And another way that these plants can be used is in a no-mow zone and fertilizer-free zone around water bodies. So if you live on a water body, on a lake or on a river, part of the ordinance states that you have to keep at least 15 feet away with any fertilizer. You cannot get closer to that water body than 15 feet. There's also a recommended no-mow zone of 10 feet. So that no-mow zone is kind of a great opportunity to bring in these native plants. And you know, those types of zones are really wonderful when it comes to nutrient uptake, because they can absorb any nutrients coming from your landscape as well as absorbing any nutrients from the water body. So when we're talking about nutrients, that's another application of native plants. Home composting is, you know, essentially decomposition. It's kind of just a recipe of carbon and nitrogen. Essentially, your kitchen scraps are going to be more nitrogen, and then your carbon is going to be like shredded newspaper and dried leaves and things like that that are dry and crisp. And so once you get the right combination of nitrogen and carbon and a little bit of water and air in there, then it's going to decompose, and that's really as simple as it is.
And then over time you build up this compost material. Absolutely. And you use it on your plants. You can. The compost is actually exempt from the ordinance, so you can apply compost to things like your vegetable gardens without any problems there. So compost that you're making at your home is essentially soil, but it's very, very rich in nutrients. So that's essentially what compost is, and you can use it on, you know, any plants, but these native plants won't actually require those levels of nutrients. They have adapted to be able to find those nutrients themselves in the soil. They have deep tap roots, or they have all sorts of adaptations that can allow them to do that. However, our vegetable gardens, things like bell peppers or things that we might want to grow any time of the year, they might not be as well adapted because they've been bred for the production usually. So they would benefit from those nutrients. So what are some other tips that you have as far as, in general, things that people can do to make sure we're keeping our waterways clean? And one of those was just was the fertilizer, but there's some other things that people can be conscious of.
Absolutely. So when we are talking about keeping your grass clippings on the lawn, another thing that goes hand in hand with that is when you mow your lawn, to actually raise the blade a little bit on your mower and mow taller than you think. Because when you're essentially taking off part of the plant when you're mowing, and with that you're taking away its ability to photosynthesize. So when you leave that excess of green material on top, it's actually been proven that those plants are able to grow a deeper root system below the soil. And the deeper their root system, the more capable they're going to be at finding their own water and nutrients that is in the soil. So that's another way that you can kind of help to wean them off and kind of take a step back. And so that is one thing. And then additionally, if you do fertilize outside of that ban period, if you use a spreader, be sure to use a deflector shield or an edge guard to make sure that you are depositing that fertilizer only where you want it. So these types of things can actually save you money and save you time because you're making sure that the nutrients are where they belong.
So we've talked about a lot of information here. We've talked about Florida-friendly plants, native Florida plants that do well, and of course the information on the fertilizer. how can people who want to learn more about being more Floridian and being more like Felix, how can people learn more? What's the best way for them to get resources?
Sure. Well, there are actually a couple of websites that people can go to. One, for more general information about the fertilizer ordinance, you can go to volusia.org/BeFloridianNow. And that actually has information about how you can calculate and figure out how much of your nitrogen in your fertilizer bag is slow release. There's a piece of a document on there that will help you with that. And then additionally, for more information about general native plants, Solutions for Your Life, Gardening Solutions for Your Life through the University of Florida is actually a huge resource of information. And you can always call the Extension office with specific plant questions as well.
And we also have a lot of this information already on the county's website, which is volusia.org. And under the search bar, people can search for the University of Florida Extension as well as the county's Environmental Management Division. So Megan Martin with the county's Environmental Management Division, thank you so much for your information today.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for this edition of Volusia Magazine. We hope you'll join us again next week at the same time. Have a great day.